So welcome to the Arizona Daily Star Reader Chat. Our guest today is Kristen Cook. We're so excited to have her here. My name is Sarah Brown. I'm the opinion coordinator at the Arizona Daily Star, and I am joined by Sarah Garrett Gasson, my boss, the editor of the opinion pages.
Welcome. Thank you for being here. I haven't seen Kristen and it's a few years. I mean, you haven't seen those people in a few years. But that's great. Welcome.
I know. But you guys still look the same. You still look all fresh and perky, and I go for Bonnie too.
Same with you. The newsroom is not the same without you, Kristen. So I'm just going to tell a little brief bit about Kristen, and then you can just tell us more about you. So Kristen worked at the Star for about 26 years. Toward the end, it was mostly about features, profiles, that sort of thing. But in her time at the Star, I think we were talking that you pretty much did every beat that was in the newsroom. So she's got a lot of knowledge on a lot of different subjects. But after Kristen left the Star, she's not only a super involved mom of, is it three?
Three.
Three.
Three kids, 3 dogs.
Oh, okay. So you're a mom of 6.
Oh, plus my husband.
Oh, 7. Yes.
Yeah. I can't.
But she also, wasn't idle with her time. She wrote 2 books titled This and the other titled That. If you have not read them, you have to. There you go. But yeah, Kristen, tell us a little bit more about yourself. And then anybody, please feel free to ask questions, whether in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll enjoy a nice conversation with Kristen.
Well, thank you so much. You know what? I know this is traditionally nap time, so I just feel so honored that everybody is awake and here. And it's also double impressive because I am not super technological, and I was very worried about screwing this up. Early on in the pandemic, I had to do some Zoom calls for my kids' school, for high school. We were at the time graduation party planning for the school, not knowing at the time that it wasn't actually going to happen. And I would say every time I was visible, but nobody could ever hear me. So I would have to type. And my husband is very Zoom savvy because he's been Zooming this entire time, and just showed like the difference between the two of us. For a while, he was set up in our bedroom, and I was sick of like going back and forth and being in the background. And so I one time like army crawled because I wanted to get back in the bathroom and take a shower. And he turned around and he said, everybody can see you, right? It was very embarrassing, but I'm very happy to be here today.
And that's okay if there is.
So this was a gift, and I thought it was so hilarious. And allegedly, you can put an entire bottle of wine in here, and I tested it, and you truly can. It is just that big. Yeah.
For those that can't see her cup that she was just drinking out of, just said there may be wine in here.
Just kidding. It's, now that we're coming out of the pandemic, I feel like I need to reel back on the day drinking. So I don't know. What do you guys want to know? I'm an open book. 2 of them even. I will tell you everything, although I feel like I've told everything there is to know and this and that.
No, tell us a little bit about, what made you decide to write a book. And for those that haven't read your book, give us a little teaser about what they're about or the inspiration behind them.
So when I was a little kid, 7, I actually started writing a book, and I sat down and like every day when the other kids were outside playing in our cul-de-sac, I was sitting down and I was writing a story about a white horse because I really wanted a horse. And I think I got like to 17 pages, and then I just got tired of it and I moved on. But like always in the back of my little brain, I was like, one day I'd like to write a book. And when I got to college and discovered you can actually get paid and make a living writing stories and journalism, then I did that. And I found that, as much as I enjoyed telling other people's stories, by the time that I got home, I wasn't that interested in really doing my own writing. I felt written out. I don't know, probably, I'm guessing you guys are all longtime Star readers, so you probably remember Phil Villarreal, who was the Star's movie critic, and he did a bunch of different stuff. Wonderful writer. And that guy like would work all day at the Star, and then he had kids, he would either write at night after they went to bed, or he'd get up early in the morning. And I think he has written like 2 or 3 books. So he's like my idol. I think that's amazing. When I was feeling like I was ready to move on from the Star, which actually was my only adult job that I ever had. I was hired when I was in college. My husband actually worked at the Star at the time and pioneered this horrible shift. It was night cops, and it was a noon to midnight Sunday night shift. And that was the way that the kids who were in college could get in all their hours while they were still going to school. And so that was where I started as well. When I started at the Star, I did night cops, did that lovely noon to midnight shift. And you know, it was fine. It was happy. It was great. But then I was just feeling like I'm ready to it's been 26 years. I'm kind of ready to do something else. I'm kind of ready to like maybe take a little bit of a breather, because it's all my adult life I had been, okay, let's get the kids ready, let's go do this job, then come back and take care, you know, do the afternoon shift with the kids and all that good stuff. So when I was thinking about, well, what am I going to do to fill my time, I thought, I'm going to write that book I always wanted to write. And that was when this was born. And I thought, oh, it's going to be so easy to get a publisher. People know me. I'm known in this town. And wow, what a rude awakening to discover that if you do not have a reality TV show, or you didn't do something really stupid that went viral, you don't really get book deals. And so I decided to just move forward and publish it myself with my husband's help. Because as I said, I'm not very tech savvy, and that was like the hardest thing, like trying to do all the formatting. At the Star, I went through many system changes. That was always really hard for me. Like Bonnie knows, she sat next to me for a while. I think we probably had the same kind of issues trying to deal with stuff. It was like they would change something, like I would lose stories. It was awful. It was terrible. But we got through it. It actually got out. And I thought I was just going to coast. And then the pandemic hit. And boy, did that suck. Is really awful. And so of course I had my family. I had to go get my daughter from college. That was fun. I am not somebody who enjoys driving. And up until, you know, we could see things were kind of starting to close, and my husband and I are like, okay, somebody's got to go pick her up. Somebody's got to move her out of the dorm. What are we going to do? It was literally and she was supposed to start spring break. So it was 2 days before her spring break. Everything was shutting down. My husband was like, you've got to go get her. I'm like, okay. Like, I don't like driving. I live on the east side. I don't like driving to the outlet malls in Marana. Like, driving is not my thing. But I knuckled down and I drove from Tucson to San Luis Obispo in 11 hours with 1 bathroom stop and 2 stops for gas. I call it a PR for a P record, because I just was so afraid that if I got off the interstate, I would never figure out how to get back on. I was that white knuckle about driving. And so I'm like, I'm already nervous about it. And I kid you not, I had just gotten past Phoenix and was making my way toward Blythe, and I could see the dark clouds roll in. And I had this newish car, and it's kind of annoying because it flashes up like a lot of electrical things. And one of them was storm warning. And I was like, okay, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. I'll get through it. No, it was torrential rain. It was through LA on the freeway. I thought I was going to lose my mind. But as one of my friends, and so I'm like, I was trying to keep it together, but I have voice texting on my phone. So I was like voice texting my friends like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. Can you sing me a song? Can you do something to get me through this? And my friend's like, it's all right. You're being the mama bear. We can do things. And she was right. I made it. And I think I gave my daughter a quick hug and went to use her bathroom. And then I stole all the toilet paper that was still in the dorm room because there were like 4 rolls. So that was a very long preamble to like get to the point where, so anyway, so like we go through all of that, and then my kids are done with school, and I was like, what do we do? And my friends and I would always be talking about how, we'd send each other the goofy little videos of the little sea otters holding hands and floating, because we just needed cute things, we needed funny things. And I thought, I should write another book, and I'll write it, and it'll just be funny stuff, and well, hopefully funny stuff, and then I will donate the money so it can go to COVID relief, and that's what I'm going to do. And so that's how I had like that goal, and that like got me through like the worst of it, that for that summer, those summer months when it was just so hot and so confusing and nobody knew what was going on. And like that gave me my little lifeline. And so I wasn't expecting that I would spit out another one that fast, but I did. It's obviously very skinny and short, but I kind of feel like that's about where our attention spans are these days anyway.
I think you're right sometimes. So give us a little preview about what this is about and then what that is about.
So this is, it's all kind of the same stuff in the continuation. So this is humor essays, but also there's like some that, you know, I think of it as like a little, it's sweet, but a little poignant, and stuff about what it's like to have a family and kids growing up, and just their funny little stories, but me getting through them growing up, and all their little stages in between. And anyone who has kids knows they are frustrating little turds, and it can be really hard sometimes. And so that was actually like also my way of like coping. It was like, you have to be able to laugh at the funny things that happen. And so, and it was kind of my like, as much as I make fun of them, I like to think that I also, you know, say some nice stuff about them too. And I hope that it makes up for the fact that I started journals for all of them and then lost a couple, and like it started fizzling out along with the baby photo albums too. So I like to think that this is their childhood for them. And that is just kind of but that was me just trying to spitball and be funny and try and find things that can make us laugh in these darkish times when things were so uncertain. That was me just I just wanted to feel like I was doing a little something to try and make things a little brighter. So community service.
So what do your kids think about the books?
So my oldest daughter is, you know, like very sweet, very type. She actually bought them. She bought them on Amazon, which I thought was very sweet. The middle one is a speed reader, and I don't know how much actually even sunk in. And then my youngest is a boy. He's a teenager. And so the funny thing is, he actually ended up reading it for his dad. Like his dad, he's like, I remember like I was a little hurt, and I was like, I can't believe you haven't read my book yet. This, I honestly almost never was. I'm like, I printed it out, I had it bound at Alpha Graphics, and I gave that to my husband as his Christmas present, not because I was trying to be cheap, because I did buy him some other things, but I thought this might not ever, it was so hard getting the publisher at that point, so I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And I was like, if nobody ever reads it, this is it. You can read it. And he read it, and and both my daughters read it. My son was like, blah, 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 where's my basketball? But he did eventually read it. And with that, like he was the one who, like, he started reading it on his own, and he would like drop these little nuggets that showed he'd read the book when we were all in the car going somewhere. And I'm like, look at that, Joe, to my husband. And he's like, what? He's like, I'm sure I've read it. I'm like, no, you didn't. He only thought he read it because he formatted it, but he hadn't read it. He has since rectified that and read the book. But they're cute. They're cute. They think it's fine. They're not. I wouldn't have just written about some of the like quasi silly, embarrassing little stories if they didn't all have a great sense of humor and be able to roll with it.
Well, I don't think they could be your child and not have a great sense of humor.
Yeah. They have to be able to laugh at themselves for sure. They love laughing at me.
Well, you know, I think it goes both ways in a mom-child relationship. So
yes.
Tell us a little bit more about self-publishing. Like, I mean, it sounds so overwhelming, you know, but just talk to us about that a little bit.
I would say it is simultaneously the most triumphant thing and the most soul-sucking thing. I was so heartened by the number when I put out there on Facebook that I was going to leave the Star and I was going to write a book, and it was so heartening and lovely to see all these comments from people. It was almost kind of like I mentioned this in the book. It was like, I felt like I died and gotten to be at my wake, which was super cool. Because all these people would come out and said, oh, you interviewed me this one time, blah, 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 blah. It was such a neat experience. And there were also at the same time people who were like, hey, I'd be happy to, I've written books, I'd be happy to help you out. And so many people helped me and like gave me advice. And so when I was going through the process, I mean, I was all like, I'm going to write to those big publishers. I'm writing to Random House. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And like, I would get like these very perfunctory, oh, thank you, but blah, 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 no. And I had only one editor who said, send me your manuscript. And then I did, and I was so excited. And like, I didn't want to hear, I was like, I don't even want to check back in with him because I don't want to know what he thinks if he hasn't immediately called me back. And sure enough, he was like, it's not really my thing. And I was like, well, so it's just disheartening that, but then at the same time, I get it. Like, I see who's publishing books these days. I get what's out there. It doesn't really matter what quality of writer you are. It's like, who can you bring to the table? I have my very modest followings on social media, and that's really big right now. And so I was like, well, this way, I'm like, I can do this and I can do what I want to do, which was like a really selfish but empowering and, lovely dictatorial thing. Like, I'm going to write it. I'm like, I didn't even let people, I was like, I don't even think I had anybody read it. I think I had people proofread it, but I was like, don't tell me how to tell my story. These are my stories. And that was amazing. Like, I think I have other friends who have gone through and have had publishers and editors, and they would get so crushed with like, I love this part of my book. They're telling me I have to take it out. And so it's so liberating to be able to just do your own thing. And it's so easy these days. I talked to authors, some who had publishers and then opted to self-publish on their own because they got that autonomy and because they were in control and because things were getting kind of weird even before COVID hit. Like, the publishing industry is not what it was. Like, people who would get, authors would get marketing and publicity, and that wasn't quite happening anymore, was what the people I spoke to were telling me. And you can control, you get more of the profits. So not that I priced my book really low, and I think I made $500, and I bought myself a pair of shoes that I was like, yeah, because like for me, it was, let's just get this out there. This is what's big for me. And this is what's important to me, is like crossing that off my bucket list. And the two platforms that I explored, I ended up going, I was a little conflicted. I ended up going with Amazon's Kindle publishing, which I felt like was pretty easy to use. And like I said, as I've already established for everyone, I'm pretty much an idiot when it comes to any kind of technical stuff. And with my husband's help, I was able to walk through and do that. There were a couple of other, you can pretty much self-publish in a bunch of different ways, but this was the way that was easy. I was like, oh, Amazon, do I want to give them more money? And what I ended up doing, because I wanted to try and support local businesses too, was like, I would buy my own copies and I would take them to the local bookstores and the local stores that were carrying my book, and I was just paid consignment that way. It's definitely not something that I think self-publishing, it's more like you've got to have that passion, you've got to feel like you want to get it out there, because you're not really going to make any money off it. Although that said, I know plenty of people who are real authors and have day jobs as well. So I mean, I was sad that I didn't have that validity of having like a true publisher behind me. But at the same time, I didn't have to change anything that I didn't want to change. And I did it a second time. I did it a second time with Amazon, and I'd say that was easier than the first, except that my husband went through, he's like, oh, you did it all wrong. And then go back in and fix it.
So a couple questions in the chat from Kathy Scott. So now that your kids are almost grown and out, what are your plans now? And also, have you had any thoughts of turning your stories into a podcast? So let's go with that first one about now that your kids are almost grown, what are your plans?
Well, so I kind of feel like, so my baby still has 2 more years of college. My middle one is, just starting at Pima. Oldest is in her, hard to believe, her senior year. She's studying software engineering. I expect to be very well taken care of in the style to which I did not become accustomed when she was little, because of raising kids. I feel like right now I'm freelancing, and I do, it's very similar to journalism. So I've been like writing these little, I say that I should make these business cards and my job title would be hypocrite, because I write these little books about how to de-stress, how to work successfully from home. And it's just all stuff that I don't do myself, but I tell other people to do. Sometimes I write crossword puzzles. I'm doing a lot of editing. And so it's fun. It's kind of like journalism. And then I'm doing a lot of different stuff. It's writing. I, work from home, and it's a really nice schedule. One thing that I was not sad about was that my kids were all home and around during the pandemic. I did feel sad for all the things that they were missing out on, and I would never, ever voluntarily choose that, but it felt like a nice consolation prize to have them at home. And so, my son missed so much. He transferred high schools like right before the pandemic hit. He loves to play basketball, and because that's such a close contact sport, there wasn't a lot of that going on. And so he's just now getting back into it. And I love having the flexibility of being able to go and do what needs to be done, be there for my kids. It's funny, when I have worked their whole lives, when they were little, I was always needing to be in the office, and now I'm at home, which gives me more flexibility. And I remember a friend of mine whose kids are a little older saying, little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems. And if you can swing it, it's better to be able to be around when they're teenagers. And I like that I can volunteer at their schools and, be there they actually had a basketball tournament at my son's high school. I was there in the snack bar making nachos. Highly recommend going to any Catalina Foothills High School basketball game when I am working the nacho cheese, because you get very well distributed cheese. There's my snack bar tip. So I think for now, I'm happy with my situation and doing my freelance. And then I'm going to figure it out. Like when he graduates, like, what do I want to do? It's so weird thinking, what do I want to be when I grow up? And I'm thinking that I will probably want to transition to maybe doing something with a nonprofit. Like maybe I would help in their communications or their marketing, or just feel like I'm doing it. That's something that COVID really made me, there were just so many people hurting, and you see how many people out there need help. And I'm very fortunate. My husband's got a really good job, and that gives me some more flexibility with what I do. I mean, like, I was able to be a low-paid reporter for a long time. and now I'm like basically unpaid author because I donated my proceeds. So yeah, that was a really long rambling answer, but thank you for asking, Kathy.
No, of course. And then also, they asked about, have you thought about turning your stories into a podcast?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So I tried listening to podcasts a few times, and that's funny because somebody else told me that too. I was like, I don't like listening to the sound of my own voice. I don't know. I'm just not that big into the podcast, and I'm not big into like the audio books either. I'm like, I like to read. I'm very old school. I like my words on the page. So, and plus, like, who would tune in? I don't know. I have a blog that's like mostly my own little personal thing, and the address is out there, but I have very few subscribers, and that's okay. I'm like, I don't even think my parents read it. But it's like, I feel like it's like a writing exercise, like way back from like the high school days when you had to write in your journal for creative writing. Like, it's me trying to keep my feet in it. And
well, tell me the website again. Is it therealkristencook.com?
It is. It's therealkristencook.com. And so as my freelance has been picking up, I used to try it, like my goal was like twice a week. I started it so that I could, when I knew I was going to write a book, I started it so I had like a landing page, for all my fans and for publishers to be able to find me. And now it's just my little thing where it's like, I want to make fun of this thing that happened. I want to poke fun of so like what I put up lately was just like this little text story of us getting ready to leave on I don't call it a vacation. It is not a vacation when you travel with children. It is forced togetherness, which was interrupted by a basketball tournament in Las Vegas during the hottest it has ever been. And so I just like had, and I'll write something about it because it was quite the experience. But I just had my little like text story of like, before we'd even left Arizona, like all the stuff, there's my husband packing 10 minutes before we're supposed to leave. There's, like he almost forgot one of our kids in the bathroom at the QT on Ina. And, it's like just me texting my friends. And it's like, and that's how I cope. I'm like, if I'm mocking on my website or texting my friends to deal with things.
I love reading them. I mean, I don't have kids, but I grew up with, 4 siblings. And so I just can relate. It's hilarious because it's real. It's all the crazy antics that just happen in a family, so
yeah.
If you guys haven't checked it out, definitely give it a look. You'll enjoy it. So we have another question here from Mary Ganapole. Let's see. Does Bonnie Henry have a favorite Kristen Cook story as a former coworker? So Bonnie, if you feel up for answering that.
Oh, I have lots of stories. Unfortunately, she has lots of stories on me too. So it's kind of like detente,
And please introduce,
nuclear proliferation.
But please introduce yourself, Bonnie. For those that don't know who you are, can you kind of introduce who you are, please?
Okay, my name is Bonnie Henry. I'm a native Tucsonan. I started working at the Star in 1984 doing features and was lucky enough to get my own column. And I was able to get a column where I wrote about my family, much as Kristen's doing. This was in 1980, about a year and a half after I started at the Star. And then I was asked to do a second column a week. And this could be a Kristen quote. I said to the editor, well, my kids are growing up. They're not as cute as they used to be. What am I going to write about? And that's when I got into the history stuff. And that turned to be real rewarding too. But Kristen and I were cellmates for many years together. And I remember two things, and they both had, I think, to do with pregnancy. And Kristen, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. It seemed to me that years ago, when you were on the Metro desk, you had a great big series on unwed teenage mothers. I think you had that one, and you may have done it with somebody else. But did you not at one time come into the office and you had like a fake belly and you pretended you were pregnant or so? Did that happen or not? Did that ever happen? No? Okay.
I don't know. I did. I do remember pulling an April Fool's prank on Sarah, like she would have been your equivalent at the time. And like I had like spent weeks, like building it all up. And that was my April Fool's joke that I actually wasn't pregnant. But I probably did, Bonnie. I wouldn't be surprised if I had
You would.
like,
You would
strapped
do
on a
anything.
belly.
And I do remember I felt very honored when you were pregnant with your first and you showed me the sonogram. You came into the office and you showed me the sonogram and I just, oh my God, I think we both cried. I don't know. It was just really neat.
Yeah.
I had no idea you had the second book. I bought your first book and it was great to see you. Where can I get the second book? And don't tell me Amazon. I hate Amazon.
I'm so sorry. Like that's how I
That's
did
it.
it. So
Okay.
Like, because it was COVID, and so nobody was even going to any bookstores. So that's yeah. But
It's not so locally in Tucson anywhere, though.
I hadn't. Because I just put. It's been a year now, and so and because it was kind of under the radar, and it was like my little like passion project. Because it's like I just felt like I wanted to do it for my friends and to try and raise some money to help.
Well, I'll break down and order it from Amazon. I'll make the sign of the cross and order it. So it's great seeing you. I love you. I'm glad you're thriving, and say hi to Joe for me.
I will. So good to see you.
Okay.
So I could totally see you doing that in the newsroom, but with a great pair of heels.
Yeah.
You had to be the only reporter that always had a great pair of heels on.
I love the shoes.
Let's see. We have another question from Carla. Have you ever considered stand-up?
Oh.
Wow, that's very flattering and nice of you to ask. I don't know. Probably the closest I ever got was doing the stories that the storytellers program that the Star does, but my friend / former coworker Kathy Birch did stand up at last, and I went to watch her and all these other people. I think I'd do it, but I never. But it's not like I don't know. I think that I kind of like internally craft in my head what I would do, but then I just end up like putting it on the blog.
I could see you being an awesome guest at like Estrogen Hour, like when they like on that series that they do. You would be an awesome addition to that.
Very sweet of you to say.
Maybe I'll have to send a recommendation, and then I'll be like, you should ask her, and then that'll motivate them. So, just since we're talking a lot about like pandemic and this and that, you mentioned a little bit, but what were some of the biggest ways, like how you and your family were kind of affected? Because you had kids in college and in high school, and you kind of touched a little bit on that, but and your husband, I don't think he normally works from home, correct?
No, he does
not.
If
you want to talk to that at all, or?
Yeah, it was the craziest thing. It was like a lot of togetherness all the time, which, as you can imagine, is a very mixed bag. And wow, it was so weird. And we have a lot of family in town, but everybody was so, we wanted to, it's like we got to protect our parents. We're so used to seeing each other all the time, and I think that was really hard. And my parents are maybe like this much better than I am with technology, so we would try and do these, like we'd try and do FaceTime, and I'd try and it was just comical, and it wasn't quite the same. So we stuck with old school phone calls, and that seemed to be the best way to handle it. I think like we just were just home all the time. I would try and go to the grocery store, but I would go like at 7 a.m. in the morning and try and get in and get out. And I think the worst was my middle child actually had a job at in the mall during the holidays, and so we just had her go and get COVID tested every couple of weeks, just to be careful and be safe. Like, she was supposed to be in this internship program at the U of A after she graduated from high school, and it disappeared. And it was, it was too late to try and get her enrolled in any classes, and like, that kid needed to be out of the house. She's very social, and she needed something to do. She was driving us all crazy. And so it was like, God, come on. But it was like one of those like sports memorabilia stores. So I was like, how busy could that be? And so she just, she was good with the mask protocol and careful about it. So she goes, she gets tested. New Year's Day, she gets back the results. She's positive. We're like,
no.
oh, it's like, I'm not gonna say what we said, but we were like all freaking out. I'm like, oh my God. So I'm like on the computer, I'm trying to find a place. We're like, you go in your room now. Like, so that, like we engaged in all the protocol. We were trying to find the rapid test where you could get the results back very quickly. And they were virtually impossible to find. We found, and of course, New Year's Day. So we had one, I think we found one urgent care clinic way on the other side of town. It's like, doesn't matter, we're going. We load up in the car, we head down, the rest of us, we head down there, and my husband goes in and he's like, okay, they can't take us anyway, but he's like, it's insane. He's like, there are a lot of sick looking people. Not everybody's in masks. He's like, no, it's not. So we ended up the next day, camped out in our car and thank goodness it was January, in the urgent care parking lot, waiting for them to be able to swab us. And like, I think, so it's just as a show of solidarity, I had just gone because my daughter was getting the test all the time. My son was like a little bit he was thinking that he was feeling weird on his birthday in November. And so he'd gotten he'd been COVID tested once before. And I felt like I needed to experience that. So I'm like, I'd gone and like had the, Q-tip up the nose, and I laughed hysterically. It was just, it's not like it felt good, but it was just such a weird experience. And so the second time we go to the urgent care, we literally were in the car for 4 hours. It was, in a sick, twisted way, fun, because it was the four of us. We were playing our little games. We were like, are they ever gonna go up in here? This is insane, blah, blah, blah. They finally took us all in. They put two of us in one room, two in another. And like, that nurse like shoved that stick up there. I'm like, it touched gray matter. It was so, and she like the slow spin, like we were, that I did not laugh at that, and none of us enjoyed it, but she was looking at it. She's like, yeah, your throats look red. I wouldn't be surprised. But that was the worst. That was the lowest point, because we quarantined and, just had the groceries dropped off outside the door, didn't go anywhere. And we were all just stir crazy. Well, about a month after, and so my daughter ended up testing negative. We all did we did our requisite time so that we got to the point that we were okay, and we kept getting tested in between and kept negative. So my middle child and I, in February, went to donate blood. When we went, one of the things they check for is to see if you have COVID antibodies. There were none. She was a false positive. Thank goodness. I would much prefer that. And that was, it was horrible that we went through all of that. But I mean, it could have been so much worse.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness she's okay. But
I know.
I still, knock on wood, have not had the COVID test yet. But my husband's had to have it, I think, I don't know, 3 or 4, because of his work, there would be someone that would come in that tested positive or this or that. And, I every time he would come out, after being tested, he would be like, yeah, that nurse was at the end of her day. She went up real far, or, or he's like, she was a nice nurse, but, but it was very unsettling, especially in the beginning, because it was like, when it happened, we were like, where do we go? Because there was so much confusion, like where you could go get a test, and, and it was just, but thank goodness that all kind of got a lot more organized. And now, people go and get tested if they have any fear, and it's no problem, so.
Yeah, it's really crazy to think about how far we have come in that. When you think about it, it's pretty amazing to like not have any knowledge about COVID-19. Nobody ever experienced it, nobody alive today, well, except for like those, two people you would read about in the New York Times who, survived the Spanish flu, and now this. And it's amazing. It's just amazing.
Definitely.
So I feel like we're in a much better spot, but it still makes me, I'm still a little nervous, I feel like we can't totally, gotta still be safe. I still wear my mask when I go running it. Although I have to say, I do think that one of the pickups, like the Target pickups, game changer. I love those so much. I've literally bought an orange, some Q-tips and cotton balls the other day. And I'm like, they brought them to my, I feel like I'm a Kardashian. It's like, they bring them to your car. You don't have to get out of the car.
There are some things that I hope stay after the pandemic. I was telling Sarah, we got last minute tickets to the Gaslight last Friday. And the Gaslight, I love it, but it's so packed, that if you've ever been, but they have removed like over half of the tables now. And so I was like, oh man, this was great. There was 2 people at our table. I mean, I feel bad, of course, because there's less people supporting them,
right.
but purely selfishly.
Yeah, we were, so, I mentioned we were in Vegas, and it's just like, wow, did anything happen here? Although I was very heartened by, there were a lot of people wearing masks. But yeah, it's a weird thing. It's like, you don't want businesses to suffer. Like, we worked super hard, like during the pandemic, to like just always order from the local, order from the local restaurants, do the pickup or delivery, and try and do what we can, and so many places closed. It's so sad, just still those repercussions. But at the same time, it's like, wow, I kind of didn't realize how much I liked my space. Like you were just saying about the Gaslight, like we've eaten in restaurants a little since getting vaccinated and things being open. It's like a lot of places are still very safe. It's like, I kind of liked it. I like it.
Kristen, I had a question about your switching from journalism, where you're going out, you're talking to people, telling their stories, as you said, switching gears as a writer to write about your own stuff. How did that go? And how do you set aside time? What is your writing process?
That's a really good question. It's like, I like doing this right now. I was kind of a little anxiety, or a little bit, because it's not normal to be on that other side of the mic. See, look at Bonnie. Bonnie's like, it's like, it's not, it's like, we're not used to talking about ourselves. It's weird. I just saw somebody's back from golfing. And so because I'd had the column, that kind of gave, so I'm like, I got a little more used to it. And I always looked at it as like, not really so much talking about me as like telling a funny story that would kind of involve me. I was really, with the first book, I was very regimented with my time, and I had more time, and like things were more normal then too, and nobody else was around, so I could take my time getting ready in the morning, sit in my robe, and I'm much better in the morning. So I would try and every day just sit and just write, and sometimes the words just flowed, and other times it was really hard. I always laugh about the kids when they have to write, they have to write an essay for school, and they're like, what do you know about writer's block? That's what you do. And it's like, no, you don't understand. It's crippling when that's your job and you have to write every day. But because I think you force yourself to do it and you accept, it's like, all right, maybe this is not the best thing that I've ever written, but I wrote something, and that's a great first step. And I can come back and that was lovely to have the luxury of knowing that I had time to go and polish. you know, when you're working at a newspaper, especially at the end, man, we'd be like cranking out stories and there wouldn't be necessarily a lot of time. And so I got to be pretty fast, and you know, and I got a lot faster thinking on my feet. I laugh about how in the very beginning when I first started, and I would go out on, you know, it's like there would be, you know, whatever happened, whatever cop story it was, and I would come back with my notebook and I would have like my other notepad and I would write a little outline. You know, like I could not compose on a computer. It was so weird to me. Now I can't, I do it all the time. Like I that's just it's automatic, but like it's so funny. Like, well, what a difference 26 years makes. Like, my little outline.
Well, some of the old ways are the best, you know, don't break what works.
Yeah.
Well, we are winding down on our time. So if you want to kind of give any closing, you know, things or whatnot, and then we'll kind of talk about who our next week's guest is. But anything else you want to put out there about anything coming up or anything to look for? Or,
you know, I don't know. It's like I like things in threes. I got 3 kids. I got 3 dogs. But I haven't quite decided if there will be a third book or not. But I love that I can think about maybe doing that. But one thing that I would like to say is, like, I appreciate all of you for taking the time. I don't take anything for granted, and especially, you know, after going through this whole experience. So anybody who tells me that they like took the time to go, you know, especially if you hate Amazon and you went and you looked for my book and you got it, like, and you spent your money, you know, for something that I wrote. I'm like, that's such a huge thing to me. Like, I appreciate that. I was at the gym this morning, and this, it's just a man that I know, you know, like kind of well, but not super well. And he's like, I was in bed last night with my wife and she's just giggling and it's like, and she laughed. And then nothing, and then she'd laugh, and he's like, what is going on? And she was reading my book, and like, and it's like, oh, you know, all of you guys who were in the newspaper know, you hear when people don't like what you write. You don't necessarily hear if people enjoyed what you do, and if they liked your story. Sometimes you do. There are those kind souls who will take the time to send you an email, and I, honest to God, still have that folder in my email when readers would send in a little note and say, I really enjoyed that story. And sometimes they would give me a little story back. That is such a special connection. And so everybody who just like took the time to write like a nice little review, like it's such a pain in the butt to do those on Amazon. And it's like, you spent your time for something I did, and I appreciate that. And, you know, you guys are taking time out of your afternoon to hang with me. And that's just really, I think that's special. And I think that even more after COVID, like just even that little bit of human connection, even if it's virtual, is very, very special. It takes effort. And I appreciate that. So thank you.
well, we thank you so much for your time. It's been nice to catch up with you and find out what you've been doing. And even though we're not like in the newsroom anymore, we just miss your presence. You were.
I miss you guys so much. That was the biggest thing. The biggest adjustment was like not being around those happy, shiny faces and, you know, snarking and being sarcastic. But, you know, we all loved each other and we were all in the same boat, and that was awesome. Same boat with no windows.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you again. So next week we have another guest, as always. So next week we have Dean Salmon, who's going to be joining us. Dean currently works at Kitt Peak, and he is the observatory technician. Dean has also been an astronomy photographer and nature photographer for. He's been doing astronomy photography for quite some time. I think it's like 30 years, and nature photography for about 20. But they're amazing. But he's also just your astronomy guide. Like, he can make it simple and cool. So we'll really enjoy having him. But we thank you guys all for joining us. And of course, thank you again, Kristen, for being here. And we will see you all again next week.